You found the skeleton. How would you tell people that this happens? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to another Kent with Bent. And we are doing this not quite as live as we normally do.
Are you sure? It feels live.
It does feel live, but then why is there no live chat up on screen?
Is that over? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. Well, as you know, sometimes things come up, and there's, moving stuff going on, and it's a busy time. So this is here so that, because we can't always be here every Tuesday, this is here to help with that. So this is Kent with Bent Pre-Recorded Episode 1, and because we don't want to interrupt the other Kent with Bent series, the regular one, we'll be taking a look at a different video that we're not doing in that series. This is 100 Reasons Why Evolution is So Stupid with Kent Hovind. And now I know what you're probably thinking. Wait a minute. Isn't that the video that Logic is, taken apart? And yeah, Logic, I'm coming at you, man. You never finished.
Oh.
I said in one of my first ever videos that I probably wasn't going to do this one, but that was with the understanding that you were actually going to continue your series. So, hey, I even offered to do a free episode for Logic, continuing that, just to get another episode out. So, oh well. Hey, I don't think he minds too much. He's mostly on to weird conspiracy theories about Armageddon now. So, we are still going to do the normal drinking game, if you will, which we, again, do not actually encourage you to play along with. However, if you decide to, we accept no liability or responsibility for any damage to your brain, to anyone else, to property, anything like that. It's all on you. But the rules are, we drink whenever Kent Hovind gets something right. Now, he can't be just quoting, because that doesn't count, because that's not Kent Hovind getting it right. That's just whoever wrote whatever book or whatever he's quoting from. It has to be Kent Hovind, the man himself. Now, we also drink whenever Kent Hovind is just so wrong that we just kind of have to for our own sanity. And, let's see, we also drink whenever Kent Hovind tells a joke that doesn't land. And we also get semi-random instances of visits from Toho Kaiju.
I think I can help with that.
There we go. Take our first drink.
That sounded like Godzilla. That's one of my favorite monsters.
Yeah, you've actually recently just gone through, 30 Godzilla movies in the last year?
Well, what happened so briefly, yeah, we were doing them for the Seabed show, and there was an issue with one, and we just had to do them off air, and we're going occasionally. But then the last couple of weeks, we've been trying to get through a bunch of them. So yeah, we're catching up on with the. We want to be ready for the new Godzilla as it comes out.
Yeah, so that way on opening day or something, we'll be caught up. Well, you'll be caught up. I'm already caught up.
I'll be caught up, yeah.
Right.
But
okay, well, we can't keep delaying Kent Hovind. There is one other normal drink trigger that is if channel members chat one of our two kaiju emojis, which are Godzilla and Mothra. We usually take a drink for that. Now, we can't do that ourselves during this recording session, but if you're playing along at home and someone does that, because we're probably going to premiere this, and someone does it in the live stream, I would say that should count if you're playing along at home. And who knows, maybe if I catch this when it premieres, then maybe I'll play along and drink for those too. Who knows? You just gotta roll with it.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. Kent Hovind. 100 Reasons Evolution is So Stupid.
And I travel around and speak on creation, evolution, and dinosaurs. Honored to be here in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. My first time to preach in your city. How many have been to one of my seminars before or have seen one of the tapes before? Oh, quite a few. How many have not?
That's one question. That's two.
How many do not understand the question so far?
That's a third question. Oh, that joke actually landed.
That's what I thought. Well,
an easy audience today.
I tell folks right up front before I get started too far, because I don't want anybody sneaking up on me. I believe the Bible is the infallible, inspired, inerrant word of the living God. I believe it from cover to cover. I even believe the cover on mine. It says Kent Hovind. I believe that.
How are they
What I
laughing
try to
at
do in my
that?
seminars, I have 3 distinct goals. Number 1, I want to strengthen your faith in the Word of God. Number 2, if you're not saved, I'm going to try to get you saved. I'm after you. I'll tell you right now, I'm after you. Okay. Number 3, if you're saved and you're not doing much for the Lord, then I'm going to try to make you uncomfortable.
I don't like that.
Go ahead.
Okay, here's why I don't like that. How does that compatible with love your neighbor as yourself? I would challenge Kent, if he ever watches this, answer me this question. If you still think that, how is what you just said compatible with loving your neighbor as yourself? I don't see how it is. Please enlighten me.
I would also say
because I think it's just completely incompatible with that, and I don't appreciate that from someone who calls himself a Christian. Because I call myself a Christian, and I don't. I want to love my neighbor as myself, and if I treated people that way, I don't think I would be doing it at all. My aim would be completely off. So that's why I ask, because maybe it's not that way for him. But I'd like that explanation, please, Kent.
Fair enough. I would also like to say that I think it's fair to say that Kent Hovind has probably deconverted more Christians than he's converted.
Well, it'd be impossible to know for sure, but I
think there's a fair chance.
I'm hoping that it isn't that case. That isn't the case, but I know people who were borderline on their faith and left it because they found out Kent Hovind had been lying this whole time, and it was kind of based on growing up with Kent Hovind. And I'm like, well, that has to count against him to some degree, right? Like if he's trying to convert people and he's actively deconverting them, his aim is clearly off in how he's doing it. So,
well, it turns out that when you teach that, hey, be a Christian, and we believe these absurd things that can't possibly be true, not a great way to make new Christians, but it's a pretty decent way to get rid of current ones.
Yeah, and people like me who didn't know any better were like, yeah, that sounds good. But when you know better, it's like, oh. And then when you learn that Kent knows better, that's when it's like, oh, okay, now there's a serious problem with this person.
Yeah.
A serious problem, okay? So I'm still trying to give principle of charity. Say, maybe Kent, maybe I'm misunderstanding you, but...
You're so generous with Kent on that one.
I'm going to be, because it's my job to love my enemies and to love my neighbors, right? I have to be for me. I have to.
Okay.
I can't live my life any other way.
All right.
How many chances do I give you before I'm not gonna think you're trying to be honest? I mean, how many?
I'm long past thinking that he's trying to be honest.
But I'm still trying, man. I'm still trying, because even if Kent becomes my enemy, I still have to love him, right? So
fair enough.
You know.
Everybody ought to find something to do for the Lord, okay? The worst of you could serve as bad examples, if nothing else. But you can all find
jokes
something to do for the Lord.
I mean, maybe right, maybe he means it. No, never mind.
Okay.
Never mind.
This is not my wife.
No, it's not. It's not even a picture of her.
It was.
This is just a picture of her.
Oof, I'm just going to take a quick drink for just how bad Kent Hovind's love life has been.
You know why these people are laughing? They're laughing because his delivery of these jokes isn't actually all that bad right now.
That's true, yeah. This was sort of peak Kent Hovind.
Works. This is peak charisma Kent Hovind.
Yeah.
This is why I felt like I don't want to say fell in love with the guy, but fell into everything he taught, the way he taught it. Like, it's so charismatic, man. It's like, even his jokes were, probably 12. Like, that's pretty hilarious when you're 12. I'll tell you that.
Oh, yeah.
And hearing him say it now, it's like, oh yeah, that's you were better at the delivery back then, Kent. Like, that's just the way it's gonna go. I don't want to hold that against him, but
I'm wondering, okay, so if you guys are watching this on a premiere, press 1 in the chat if you're paying attention to Bent Hovind, and press 2 in the chat if you're just watching his dog play with a ball. Because I think there's gonna be a fair few twos. I'm gonna be saying it distracted me, so.
We live in Pensacola, Florida. I've been there 12 years. We have 3 kids, 1 of each. My kids.
There's the son that you don't hear about much, Kent Andrew Hovind.
So is the 1 of each like him disrespecting his son? Which one did he want to take outside and beat until he stopped? whatever.
Presumably Eric.
remember.
We think it's Eric, but we're not really sure. Although now, as far as I know, Kent Andrew is still employed by Eric as his one of his camera operators. So, but we'll keep going.
Are at this time 21, 22, 23, a year and 2 weeks apart. We call that family planning where I come from. Got the 2 boys married off now, and as soon as I find someone that...
I don't understand how that's a joke.
I'm not sure either, although I gotta say, man, Joe Hoven was, if that's the case, pregnant for almost 3 years. Actually, yeah, basically almost 3 years straight. Like, ouch.
Yeah.
That's rough.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
No, you probably couldn't. No, I don't think I could either.
Big overpayments on my daughter. I'm going to be home free.
Didn't Arnold Schwarzenegger do that? Didn't he get pregnant at one point?
Yes, in a brilliant documentary called Junior.
All right. Well, maybe we should call him up and see if he has the technology.
Yeah. So that's the plan. One of my hobbies for many years, I have been collecting science books. I like science, and you can.
But he hasn't been reading any of them.
Yeah, that makes me wonder though. Like, how much of these has he read?
Here's the thing. He doesn't read them. He combs through them for quote mines.
Does he even do that? Okay.
Well, it might not even be him. It might be other people on his staff who did it for him, but that's what they're for. They're just there so that he can find a little choice little nugget that he can take out of context and make it sound silly.
I guess the reason I ask is because since the VA paid for my education, my college education, I decided they're buying the books too. Really, I'm keeping them, and I have all of them. And I, read through them during the classes, and I've occasionally glanced at them now and then. But like, I have more than this amount of textbooks in a bookshelf back there, or at least this many, and I don't honestly read through them. I mean, like, really, like, does Kent actually buy these and spend all this time reading through them? I
doubt it. Although,
how does he have the time?
To be fair, in terms of time, these are like elementary school textbooks, not your college level textbooks. So these would be easier to read through. These are made for like 10-year-olds, which is roughly Kent Hoven's mental age, as far as I can tell.
That's fair.
Ask any of my kids or ask my wife when I get bored, which isn't too often around our place. I just read science books. I like science. Taught it for 15 years. Even though I'm not teaching it anymore, I still like to study. It's so many neat things to learn. And there's an awful lot of good science in these books. But folks, there are some lies in our science books.
Prove it, Kent.
I'm not against science. I'm not against schools. I'm not against
That's
teachers.
A bold
My brother's in his
statement.
34th year teaching public school.
A very
My mom
charismatically bold statement.
So here's the thing.
He delivers that line. Yeah.
For it to be a lie, it has to be an intentional deceit, right? If you're just mistaken, you're not lying. So, for example...
You know how many encyclopedias are filled with lies because they didn't know?
Right.
The level of detail on science?
Like, so for instance, I remember there being a 7-Eleven, if you go out of the driveway here and take a right, and another one if you take a left. But if one of those is closed down since the last time I was there, I might be wrong about that, but I'm not lying if I say that there are 2 7-Elevens, one in either direction. So, it's just one of those things where, like, you have to be able to demonstrate that someone knows better. Now, I happen to think that if they've been corrected on something, and it's been pretty well documented that they were wrong and that the correction is right, and they continue to make the same error, that's reasonable. Sorry. That's a reasonable way to infer that they are lying. And Kent Hoven is in that category. But I don't think the textbook authors are. So, now they do get things wrong.
That was, for me, a big thing with Kent Hoven. Once I started watching enough Kent Hoven and, like, paying attention to the dates of these debates, and, like, wait, Kent, I know you know better.
Yeah.
I know you know better. A previous debate that I just watched because I'm binge watching these, you just were proving this exact thing, and this debate was referenced in the one we're in right now.
Yep.
As the one from like 2 weeks ago. And you're corrected then, you're doing the same thing now. Repeatedly. That's how you can know they're lying.
Yeah.
Even then, I still want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but like, if Kent can explain to me how he wasn't lying there, I don't see how he could, but if he could, I'd be willing to consider that. No.
Yeah, no, he's lying.
Hired and teach in public school. There's an awful lot of good godly teachers in the system, but there's some poison in these books. We're going to cover some of that tonight. Richard Dawkins, who hates creationists, said, "It is absolutely safe to say that if you meet someone who claims not to believe in evolution, that person is ignorant, stupid, or insane, or wicked." Well, Richard, let's send you a copy of this tape, because I'm going to show you 100 reasons why evolution is so stupid.
I really hope that he sent a copy of this to him, because I would like to see how that viewing went.
All right. So he says he's gonna point out a bunch of lies in textbooks, right?
Yep.
And then the very next thing he says is a quote from someone else that wasn't in a textbook, as far as I know.
No, that was Richard Dawkins.
But I'm taking notes. I want him to start pointing these out because he says there's a bunch, right?
Yeah. No, I will say I actually agree with Dawkins here, and I don't always agree with Dawkins. I have some pretty hefty criticisms for Dawkins once he steps outside of Evo Devo. He's really not very good at things like philosophy and such things, where he likes to spend a lot of time, which is unfortunate. But I do agree with him there, and I think that for the most part, the people who don't believe in evolution are in the ignorant category. Like, most people just don't know any better. Because, I mean, most people don't know much about most scientific theories. Why would they? So.
We need to define a few terms, okay?
Okay, Ken.
According to the dictionary, stupid means lacking normal intelligence, foolish, silly, a stupid idea, dull, and boring. I think evolution is stupid. Now, my mommy used to get mad at me when I used that word, so it's a little hard for me, but Bill said, "Brother Hovind, I want you to preach on 100 reasons why evolution is stupid." Okay, Bill, well, you asked for it, so here goes, all right? Let's define some other terms now.
That was supposed to be a joke, and it didn't work.
6 different meanings, and I've done 58 debates now, and if you're going to get into a debate on evolution with anybody, you better first define what you're talking about. Because this is a very...
Or you could just debate the thing that you could just debate the thing that you came to debate. If someone agrees to a debate... If someone agrees to a debate on evolution versus creation, they're here to talk about biological evolution. They're not here to talk about the Big Bang. They're not here to talk about nucleosynthesis. They're not here to talk about the formation of the planet or stars or any of these things. If you want to have a debate on those, you title it something else. You say, creation versus nucleosynthesis. Creation versus the Big Bang. Creation versus abiogenesis.
Very slippery term, okay? First, we have cosmic evolution. That would be the Big Bang. There is no evidence whatsoever.
I like how he just names what it's actually called right there,
then we'd have
in
to have
bold.
chemical evolution. See, the Big Bang supposedly made hydrogen. How did we get 92 elements?
We could pause and talk about this a bunch, but we've gone through this so many times.
Yeah. You know what? I'll just take a quick sip for every 2 of these that he gets wrong. We'll just take a drink. So there's one for
one slow drink while he does all 6 for how stupid. Well, they're not all 6 because
I'll have to drink pretty slowly because
I'm just kidding.
Plus the synthetic ones. I mean, how did the chemicals evolve? They don't talk.
Oh, I'd like to point out. I've never pointed this out before.
Nuclear fusion.
Well, no,
at the bottom. They produce hydrogen and some helium. How did the other 105 elements evolve?
First, nucleosynthesis, we've gone over it. But another one is, he says, plus the synthetic ones. We know exactly how those get made, Kent. Humans make them. Humans in labs smashing atoms together.
I don't know how those humans do that, but if humans know how.
Right, because they make them.
Humans know how those humans do it. So humanity knows how.
It's like, gee, I wonder how...
I don't know how exactly how it's done doesn't mean...
It's like, gee, I wonder how cars get made. It's like, well, I don't know specifically, but I know that someone does, because people make cars. Right, there's cars out there, and people make them in factories. So, yeah. How did the synthetic ones evolve, Ken? Well...
Talk about that much, but
those are designed.
They have to have stellar and planetary evolution. But you know, the
are they not?
have
Aren't
to
the
evolve.
synthetic ones by design? If
well,
we ran out upside. I wanted it to be exactly like this. We're like, we're gonna just do this and see what happens. And now we've got these new elements.
There's certainly human cause. I guess design is sort of one of those, like, you'd have to get nitpicky on exactly what you mean by design.
That's fair. That's fair, but I think there's a reasonable interpretation that I say that's design.
I'd say that's true.
And that would, doesn't really imply anything, I don't think. But it implies that if Kent doesn't, I don't know why Kent wouldn't go to that. If I'm going to that as a possibility, I think Kent would be all over that, right?
Yeah, that just proves that it takes intelligence to make it.
They all have to be designed, right?
Yeah.
That's what he would do.
Yeah, but he doesn't. He never does. It's weird.
I don't know.
Oh well.
There's an awful lot of stars out there, folks, but nobody's ever seen one form.
I'll drink to
There's stars out there that everybody
the first part of that was true. There are an awful lot of stars out there.
That is true.
The second part was stupid for a couple. I don't know. Maybe one big broad reason.
Well, let's let him finish this sentence because I think he's going to keep talking about that, and then we'll go on about stellar formation and whatnot.
Earth can personally own 2 trillion of them.
Was that a joke?
I think it means if you. Yeah, I don't.
Are big numbers funny?
Wait a minute. They did laugh at. Why did they laugh at that?
I don't know. Bent, 18 quadrillion.
Oh man, that is funny. No. I tried.
Yeah.
Have we gotten to one of the 100 reasons why evolution is stupid yet?
I think maybe. I don't know. Are you going to try to keep track of each one? Okay, you're going to keep track?
One star forming. We see them blow up from time to time. It's called a nova or a supernova. We've never seen one form.
It's sort of like saying that I've never seen a redwood tree grow. It's kind of true, but it's also kind of not true that people haven't seen redwood trees grow. See, the thing is, going from a seedling redwood to a big, tall, 300-foot tall, whatever, tree takes kind of a while, but you can see every step in the process, and you know about how it should go. So because you can see different trees at different stages of this life cycle, you know that it's reasonable to say that, oh yeah, redwood seeds grow into redwood saplings that eventually grow into gigantic, enormous trees that are straight out of the Cretaceous era, which is true, by the way. Redwoods were all over the place. How long was that
to take for a redwood tree to,
I mean, those giant redwood trees are usually at least a few centuries old.
And humans can't see the whole thing because humans aren't a few centuries old. Right?
In fact, actually,
same with stellar formation.
Some of the larger ones can be over 2,000 years old. I know of
a tree over 10,000.
There is. It's the Methuselah pine. It's around 10,000 years. I think it's closer to 9,000, but it's
Oh.
It's older than the Kent thinks the universe is.
A lot older than the universe.
Yeah. So, but I remember in the Museum of Science in Boston, when I went there at some point in the 90s, and they had this slice of a redwood tree, and they had put little LEDs that you could light up with a button, or they might have been small light bulbs. I don't know. 90s tech, right? But they were labeled with different years and historical events, and one of the ones near like the very center was like birth of Jesus. This tree was slightly older than Jesus, and like it was cut down in like 1990 or something, right? This is a tree that was around for nearly 2,000 years before it was cut down. No one's gonna watch that thing grow. So the same thing is true with stars. We see interstellar dust nebulae that are conducive to stellar formation. We see dust clouds collapsing with a central point of gravity. We see all of the stages of very young stars first initiating fusion and things like that. So yeah, it's true, no one has sat and watched a dust cloud completely turn into a main sequence star. For good reason.
One professor told me one time, he said, well, we calculated in the laboratory that if 20...
Should we add another drink trigger for things that never happened?
We should. Things that never happened.
Okay, well, drink trigger. Because one professor told me one time is a story that's a thing that never happened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they calculate in the lab.
Things that never happened.
Yeah.
20 stars explode near each other. It'll produce enough energy to make a brand new star.
Okay.
I said, well, that's brilliant. You got to lose 20 to gain 1. You ought to run for Congress. You could help those guys borrow their way out of debt.
Okay, but that's not what he said in your story, Kent. In your story, he said, which, by the way, again, hashtag things that didn't happen. In your story, he said that 20 stars exploding could produce a new star via their collective energy. Okay. Did he say that's the only way stars form? Because it's not even the dominant explanation for stellar formation that's currently ongoing. It's not the way that we see stars forming. I mean, And then his audience, this might be the dumbest audience Kent has ever had, or maybe just the friendliest. Because they laugh at nearly every...
I'm not going to call people...
Maybe. But they laughed at a big number.
He's kind of funny today.
All right.
Maybe not. They did laugh at a big number. I don't get it. Maybe they were... Okay.
I want to get in front of this crowd.
The whole thing is, what did he say? You got to lose 20 to get 1 or something like that?
Yeah, because he said the professor said that we calculate in the laboratory, which is not normally where you do
calculations. You
calculations.
Understand that you're essentially getting 21 stars instead of 20, not 1 star instead of 20.
Well, he said that the 20 have to explode.
They lived their full lives and then exploded. Does that not count for them not having existed? Like, if a star lives its life and explodes and doesn't produce any other star, so what, right? Like, if 20 explode in a way that produces another new one, you're not getting 1 for 20, you're getting 21 for 20, Kent. So you're thinking about it wrong. Plus, even if it didn't happen, when they explode, it's not like that matter disappears from the universe, unless it goes into a black hole, I guess, and then you can talk about that however you want. But they explode and that matter is going out as gas. It still exists.
Yeah.
Right, Kent? So whether or not what's left over forms another star or not really isn't, you got to lose 20 to get 1. That's not at all how that works, you know? It's not like money where it can be wasted and there's no conservation of currency in the world like there is of energy. I'm done. I'm done with that.
Okay.
I ramble on for... Never, I'm not going to.
First place, that's all theoretical. We've never seen it happen, okay? And I think it is scientifically impossible. See, then we'd have to have organic evolution. That would be the origin of life. How did life get started?
Abiogenesis.
I'm drinking a Kent saying that he just thinks it's impossible.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because that's stupid. Someone much smarter than him did a lot of science to have a prediction that, you know, I don't know if it's provable or testable or computer model or whatever, right? But there's science being done there. And Kent says, what did he say? I think that's stupid for no reason. Or I don't think that's possible. Based on what?
Incredulity. It's just purely his own incredulity.
That's not honest.
Yeah. Look, if you're going to say something's impossible, you can make that argument, but you're going to have to actually give out reasons other than, nah.
Well, he says he thinks it's impossible, but he implies that he's teaching that it is impossible. So if it's his opinion, whatever, right? But if he's teaching that to people,
yeah,
no, dude, no, that's not cool.
According to the evolution theory, that would have to happen somewhere along the line, long ago and far away. Life had to come from non-living material. And yet, we've never seen that happen. There is no evidence that it can happen.
Well,
that's not evolution, but... Yeah,
it's not evolution. There is some reason to think it can happen, but it also happened in your worldview, Kent. You also think that non-living matter formed living organisms. You just think that it was done via a miracle from God. Because when the Bible says, let the oceans bring forth, or let the earth bring forth, or when God fashions humans out of a bunch of dust of the earth, yeah, that's all non-living material turning into organisms.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in fact, actually, it was a pretty common belief right up until like the modern period that the drink again that the Earth would actually spontaneously generate things like earthworms and insects and things like that. And so, for most people throughout history, the idea that the Earth brought forth living organisms wasn't actually unusual. They thought it was still doing that.
Dude, what does that even mean? Because for me, brought forth living organisms, that's abiogenesis, right?
Yeah. I mean,
there were no living organisms, and then abiogenesis, and now there's living organisms. That's what brought forth would mean, right? Like, I don't understand.
So I think the difference that Kent would see
how
here...
that's incompatible at all from Kent's perspective.
I think what Kent would complain about here is that most scientists don't invoke direct miracles for that, whereas Kent would like to. Basically, Kent is saying, there aren't enough miracles here, please add more.
I think it's two different ways of looking at the same thing. And one is
I think that's fair.
And one is evidence-based, and Kent's trying to bash the evidence-based one.
Yes.
He just doesn't understand He just doesn't understand.
But now I think we're going to actually get to two things that are evolution.
We'll talk about that in a minute. Fifthly, we would have macroevolution. That is where an animal changes into a different kind of animal.
Drink. There are no kinds.
It's a weird way to phrase it, but I think I know where he's going with this.
Well, the problem is that his idea of kinds is
I haven't
incoherent.
seen it 30 times.
Macroevolution is change at or above the species level. So if speciation occurs, macroevolution has occurred. Any change from above that is also macroevolution.
Nobody's ever seen a dog produce a non-dog.
Nor will they.
Because the evolutionist believes
No.
a dog came from a rock. If you go back far enough in time, 4.6 billion years.
Drink.
Fine.
Also, dogs came from atheists, apparently.
That'll never not be funny to me. Never.
Oh, man.
We have microevolution. Now, I don't like this word, okay, because it gets people confused. I think we ought to just call it a variation. But microevolution happens, folks. That is a fact of science.
Yeah, but microevolution is not variations within kinds. Microevolution is specifically evolution at or below the species, or sorry, below the species level, not at. At is where the cutoff is for microevolution.
At would be macro. And,
Right.
Yeah.
So, sorry about that. I'm just like, my brain is just trained to say at or, and then above or below, because, you know, you want to include...
Retrain your brain. I know it's been 150 million years, but retrain your brain.
You know, after 150 million years, those neural pathways, they get pretty ingrained.
I'll tell you what, though, like right now, you are retraining your brain. Just a little
It's
bit.
true, well, it's a little bit. Okay.
Animals produce a variety of offspring, but it's always the same kind.
Till you define a kind, Kent, that is a completely meaningless statement.
The first 5 definitions
I
of
can't
evolution
take
are...
any interpretation of what he might mean by kind there and necessarily disagree because of, what is it called, the law of monophyly?
It is called the law of monophyly.
Yeah, well, they got it!
Yeah, so the law of monophyly basically states that whatever clades you're already in, you're always going to be in, and so will all of your descendants. They can form new clades, but the new clades will always be part of the older ones. So, for instance, humans are vertebrates. So no matter what else they become in the future, they'll always be vertebrates. And similarly, they'll always be apes. They'll always be mammals. And so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, there you go.
Are stupid. It doesn't happen. It's certainly not part of science. It's something you have to believe in. They teach the kids it all started with a big bang 20 billion years ago. A big bang. I like to ask them some simple questions. What exploded?
Nothing. Nothing exploded, Kent.
And where did it come from? And where did
Who knows?
the energy come from? Et
I
cetera,
don't
et
know.
cetera.
That's the thing. Not knowing the answers to these questions doesn't invalidate the Big Bang. Even if the answer ultimately ends up being unknowable, or we just say it's God, even if we go there, it doesn't actually change the fact that the Big Bang is well supported, right? Like,
and that's what I happen to believe on a personal level, but that's a faith, it's not a science, and I'm not going to pretend like it is.
So it's sort of like say, you know Kepler's laws of planetary motion?
Oh yeah, I think I know. I don't remember.
I guess I mean, do you know of them? You're aware that they exist. Okay.
I'm aware.
It's sort of like saying Kepler doesn't get to propose those until he can tell you how the solar system formed. Why?
Why?
Yeah. It doesn't matter how the solar system formed.
I don't need to know how my car was assembled to know how to drive it.
Right. And that's but Kent Hovind is using this ignorance of the cause of starting conditions and saying that that is a point against the conclusions that we can draw about how the system changed from that starting point. But that's not a valid criticism. Now, would it be interesting to know the answer to these questions? Yes. Yeah. Yes, it would. I would like people to keep investigating.
You know what his perspective is, they don't know, and I do, and he holds up his Bible, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, sure, but you understand when people say, I don't know where that energy came from, or whatever. That's me being honest and not trying to lie about the Big Bang and lie to your children about evolution, Ken.
Party foul right there.
Oh, my bad.
It's okay. That's staying in. Oh, you think I'm going to edit this? Come on.
editing it all.
That's not true. There's going to be a little bit because I'm going to add in the credits and the intro.
Yeah, that's adding in. You're not going to change.
It still has to render.
Okay, that's fair.
All right, here we go.
According to the Big Bang Theory, it all started in a little tiny dot and exploded and spread out over all the universe much faster than the speed of light.
No. Oh, my goodness. That's stupid on so many levels. I'm going to take 2 drinks at least. Okay, so the tiny little dot didn't explode out.
Favorite part. Okay. I'll tell you my favorite part. It, meaning the Big Bang, spread across the whole universe faster than the speed of light.
The Big Bang was the expansion of the universe. The universe is what expanded, Kent.
Yes.
And it wasn't an explosion.
It was the universe expanding.
Right.
That's what the Big Bang Theory teaches. Whether it's true or not, that's what it teaches. So if he's misrepresenting it due to ignorance or whatever, he's still wrong about it. And if he's doing it repeatedly when he's been told why it's wrong, like he is now, that's when he's lying about it.
Yeah. So that might be the worst take on the Big Bang Theory that we've heard from Kent Hovind yet.
Oh, it's not. His planetary nebula hypothesis.
Oh, worse. Yeah. Do you think he's going to do that this time?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I always get these predictions wrong.
I don't know of a better way to say it. I'm trying to be nice to him, but it is just stupid. The Big Bang idea started
Your understanding of it's stupid because it's not the correct understanding of it.
Your version of the Big Bang is stupid, Kent, but the actual real version.
It's a straw man argument.
It's so bad. Yeah, your hot take is stupid, Kent. Noted.
Astronomer named George something, can't pronounce his last name. George.
Le Maître. Or you can just say Le Maître.
I've heard him pronounce it before, I believe, and maybe he learned it later or whatever, and like, it's not an easy name to pronounce, but people will probably, if you get close enough, they won't care. Just do it. But I think he was joking there, actually. I think he was making a joke, because I think he's probably attempted to pronounce it at this point in his life.
Oh.
But hey,
so was that a joke that didn't win?
On him. I can't know for sure that it was a joke, so
do we drink for it?
Chat or whatever. You guys make that determination.
I'll just take a drink.
Sure. If you think you want to drink for it. I think I'm not going to do it, but I think it may have been a failed joke attempt.
Okay.
Said that this original matter was no more than a few light years in diameter.
Okay.
At the very least, that would be 2, or about 12 trillion miles. So they started off teaching a spot 12 trillion miles across.
No, at least. No, actually, not even at least. That would be no more than. You got it exactly backwards. No more than is at most, and then you have at very least. That's literally. Oh, drink from Mothra. Bent, this is insane. It's like if I said, "Hey, I have at least 4 cups in my cupboard," and you're like, "You have at most 4 cups, so you might have 3." I said, "No, it's exactly the back. You have it exactly backwards." Kent Hovind is going the exact opposite direction.
Is he trying to say the starting point of the Big Bang was at the largest possible diameter? It was a few light years in diameter.
Well, that's what's
right, but then at the very least that would be 2 light years. No, yeah. So at the very most, that would be 2 light years.
Yeah, and now he's saying that's at the very least 2 light years. Like, no. There's no lower bound no exist in the statement. But Kent is just imposing a 2 light year lower bound.
And again, this is going to be principal charity. I've made that mistake before where I've said, "Oh, the number skyrocketed all the way down," because I use it as it just changed a lot. Even though skyrocket means going up. Maybe he's doing that. Maybe he's being, instead of like straight up lying about it. Because why would he lie about that?
I think he.
But that's a mistake I made when I wasn't thinking clearly.
Well, Kent Hovind likes to complain about change in science, so I think it's going to work into one of those narratives. But maybe.
I think he's just.
Well, they revised that down. In 1965, they said, no, it was only 275 million miles across. Well, that's way down from 12 trillion.
Okay, so the maximum proposed size was reduced. Okay.
So at the very most, that would be compatible, but at the very least, that would bother Kent if he really meant the very least.
Yeah.
Because it's less than 12 trillion.
I think that's why he did that. I think it's actually a strategic thing to make this look
I don't blame
incompatible.
myself, and I don't regret giving him the principle of charity there. But if he proves that I shouldn't have,
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
not
he's
helpful
basically
to
right
you.
here telling
So
you.
I'm gonna do it, but it's not helpful for your cause. So we'll keep going.
They said, no, it's only 71 million miles across.
Did they say it was that, or did they say it was at most that? Yeah, it's a difference.
Or at least that.
Yeah.
Who knows?
This stuff, but this is what they taught, okay? 1974, they said it was only 54,000 miles across. 1983, they said it was a trillionth the diameter of a proton.
Oh, is the trend increasing precision in scientific estimates and measurements?
Yeah, so, well, the numbers are getting smaller because of the reason why is based on what you said, yes. But I'm also noticing something else, is that these numbers are really funny to his audience.
Yeah, they seem to
They're
find
more and more every time there's a new number thrown out, and I'm not sure why it's funny.
Maybe it's just the number trillion. Maybe they just like trillion, because both times they laughed when trillion came up.
I think they're giggling more and more. Like I said, 71 million miles, there's a little more laughter, and 54,000, I heard even a little more. So, is it?
Man.
There's got to be some misunderstanding. And also, why is the word two in between those years? Sometimes yellow and sometimes white.
So, Kent likes to just randomly highlight things, as far as I can tell. Actually, if you go back to some of our previous Kent with Bent, so if in one of his CSE 101 classes that we watched for Kent with Bent, he said that he did it so that the slide was catchier to the eye. Which, I mean, hey, you noticed that.
I mean,
so
to be honest, if these were all white, it might be harder to read for me because it just blends together. There are a few words that stand out, and like when I read online, I've seen some people do this. A lot of times I'll highlight like a couple lines and then go a couple lines that are not highlighted and then highlight a few more so I don't lose my spot.
Yeah, I'll do that too.
It's not the best iPad anymore, even with these glasses. I know my prescriptions changed, so maybe it's not the worst thing. I was just pointing out, and it's not a big deal, but
yeah, I think that is why.
You're going to proofread because some words are white, some words are yellow, and I'm not sure why. And
I think it's one of those things where it's like,
why?
That's one of those areas where I'll say, you know what, I don't think Kent is being crazy here. I think that might actually be a reasonable tactic. And sure, it's a little sloppily implemented in this slide, but whatever.
Yeah, I think getting the last two lines where the word two is
look, compared to Raw Matt's books. Compared to Raw Matt's books, this is like literary genius. So, you ever read any of Raw Matt's prose?
I feel like I started that whole thing out kind of bashing it, and I was like, you know what, though? I appreciate these color changes. There's a little mistake in it, so what? Dude?
Good job, Kent. You know what? We'll drink for good job, Kent.
Thanks for that, Kent. Well, way to go.
Now they're saying it's nothing at all. Nothing exploded. And here we are.
Well, it wasn't an explosion, so yes, nothing exploded. Although calling it nothing is a little iffy. I'm not a big fan of calling it nothing, but whatever.
Kent is right. Nothing exploded. So
yeah, technically true.
That's what the textbooks teach. 18 to 20 billion years ago, all the matter in the universe was concentrated into one very dense, very hot region that may have been much smaller than a period on this.
He's been using this textbook for this long?
What is this, from 1992?
I've seen that circle of 18 to 20 billion and that underline all the matter in the... I've seen that a bunch of times. He's still using the same screenshot.
Yeah. It's... Kent, your textbook is... was it 19 years old?
When was this, though? When did he...
No, it's 29 years old.
The one we've been working through...
These are from around the same... These are from around the same period.
Okay.
So even when this was given, this was probably over 10 years old.
Okay, yeah.
And he's still using this slide? It's time to update your slides, Kent.
Well, I was thinking, is he using it now? But I guess we haven't been... Most of what we've been focusing on is still back...
Every once in a while, I still...
the same slide for the same 2 years, even if it's old. Yeah, but if he's using it when it's 30 years old, come on.
So I, every once in a while, watch some of his newer content just in case any of it's worth anything. And it's, I'll be honest, Kent Hovind has not done anything worth watching other than his debates in
a while.
3 years. At first, some of his whack and atheist stuff was somewhat okay, but then it just became the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
There was nothing new there. There was nothing entertaining. It was just, he picked a new name, and he's going to go through the same spiel he always does on Whack and Atheist. And also, the people that he picks as his target for Whack an Atheist, not always atheists, so it's kind of weird. He's like, we're gonna do a Whack an Atheist. This guy says he's a Christian, but he's on the atheist side. No.
I think Kent sees his version and the lost.
Yeah.
And so evolutionist, atheist, he'll use terms interchangeably that don't apply, like he does with the six definitions of evolution. Like he just uses terms how he wants to, not caring that they're inaccurate.
But I will... Oh! Drink Godzilla. I will say, though, that I believe in some of his most recent content, I have seen this slide. Oh, Drink Godzilla. And I believe he is still using the slide, although, like, I wouldn't place money on it. But I'm fairly confident.
I would hope not, but for this example, if this video is around the same time as the other one...
this one says, all of the matter and energy
will
once again be packed into a small area, no bigger than the period at the end of this sentence. Then, another Big Bang will occur. It happens every 80 to 100 billion years.
As far as I know, not really...
Yeah, so...
Consider that likely, although I think very recently it's been considered more likely, but it's unfalsifiable.
Well, you can check the rate and the rate of change in the expansion of the universe, and that can help you tell whether or not gravity is, in the long run, going to be dominant over the expansion, or whether the expansion is going to be dominant over gravity. And right now,
my understanding is that at one point recently it was considered unfalsifiable, but that was maybe even a year or two ago, and maybe it isn't anymore.
Most measurements of the shape of the universe, which is ultimately what that means, say that the universe is very nearly flat, so that the expansion and gravity are almost balancing each other out, but that's slightly open or negatively curved, which means that it's just going to keep expanding.
Mm-hmm.
So, now, is that necessarily true? I don't know. There's a lot of new measurements, and they're very, very close to being one way or the other on that. So
the thing is the more accurate these measurements get over time, the more this information might change, Kent. Just like measuring how large the Big Bang was when the expansion began, from 2 light years down into a singularity.
Mm-hmm.
It's a result of more accurate measurements.
All right. So
remember, Kent, in the 90s, they did not expect to see an accelerating expansion of the universe. That was a surprise to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it changed the way they had to think about the universe.
Yep.
So that was after you had been teaching your stuff, Kent. Like, science isn't all in the past, right? It's still happening actively now.
Are you saying we're learning more about the universe as time goes on?
To a much greater degree than people like Kent seem to think.
Whoa.
And the only reason I think that is because it was to a much greater degree than I thought when I thought the way Kent thinks.
Yeah.
So I'm putting that on him. It might not be actually how his brain thinks about it, but so maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's my speculation, I guess.
Fair enough.
So
you can forget about global warming.
What?
We're going to get squished.
Yeah, in 80 to 100 trillion years, if this is accurate, Kent, I think global warming might be a problem on a shorter time scale.
And you know why I don't go around worrying about like a T-Rex gonna eat me? Because they're not alive right now. And you know why people, if they were around when this were to happen, if this was still considered a valid theory, not valid, a likely theory, they wouldn't worry about certain things because it wouldn't matter anymore because they'd be worrying about other things, Kent. Like,
yeah, it's like,
so you're judging a potential future based on how the world is right now. Like, it's so narrow.
Yeah.
Like, people who are trying to objectively watch you, however long later this is, are seeing that, and it's like, if you want me to believe you doing things that demonstrate you're not being honest or fair, or all that, you see through it, Kent.
Yeah, it's kind of, and also this is sort of like saying, oh, hey, I noticed that one of your arteries has been severed and you're spurting bright red blood into the air, but let's not worry about that because your cholesterol's a little high. Like, well, maybe we should work on the acute current problem, and then later we can address the creeping up of the cholesterol levels.
I don't know, man. If you ignore the first problem, the cholesterol problem will fix itself in no time.
I mean, that's fair. But that's also true for this.
It won't fix itself, but it won't matter.
Right, but that's also true here, where it's like, oh, hey, if we just ruin the environment and everyone dies, I guess we won't have to worry about a big crunch in a few trillion years. It's like, yes, that is technically true. Not really a good endorsement for destroying the world, but, you know. So, alright, we'll hit play.
Now, this textbook author was brilliant. I could not believe how smart this guy was. He said, boys and girls, nothing really means nothing. You have to be at least that smart to write a book.
All right, hold on. Is this a line in a textbook, or is this one of the 100 reasons evolution is stupid?
See, that's the thing. He doesn't have it very well formatted, so I'm not really sure.
Yeah. There's not a lot of structure in this, because he just kind of jumped into randomness right after he said, because he jumped into that Dawkins quote, right? Right after he said he was going to point out the lies, either the poisonous lies in the textbook, I think he said something like that, or the 100 reasons evolution is stupid. So is the whole nothing really means nothing? Like, is he considering that one of the stupid things? Because it's underlined? Maybe the underlined things are how he's counting these out.
I don't know. So here's what I think happened, right? I think he's being honest that whatever pastor invited him here gave him the title for this speech, right? Because he says that the pastor, I can't see why he would lie about that, especially since the pastor's right there. He could just be like, no.
Right.
So I do believe that's what happened. And my guess is that Kent Hovind was like, okay, which slides do I want to show? And basically, in his brain, he knows what each, 1, 2, 3 is. But he didn't bother to actually make that explicit because he didn't make any new slides or anything. Because if you listen to Kent Hovind, he'll talk about how he has 1,000 slides, and he just has them. He doesn't...
Yeah, he just has them.
What he'll do is he'll pull them into different orders, and he'll take some of them out and put them into a new slideshow. But he doesn't get rid of slides. He doesn't even often make new slides. He just has a catalog of slides.
You could benefit from better organization skills, and maybe I don't know, maybe not. But
look, this is the dude who canceled the
having
debate.
This
is the dude who canceled the debate because someone spilled water on his computer.
Yeah.
So this is not exactly
at the last minute,
right?
Or I think after the debate had started, right?
Something like that. Yeah. I mean, we can't expect too much from Kent Hovind.
He said not only matter and energy would disappear, but also space and time. However,
yeah, that's why it's important to say nothing really means nothing. Because if I say, hey, there's nothing in my refrigerator, I probably don't mean that there's an absence of space and time in my refrigerator. Chances are that that's not what's in there.
Right.
It's a weird thing, but in this case, yeah, you really do have to say that. Because that's not what people normally think of.
Dude, I didn't think of that.
Well, yeah, that's the thing.
Because first of all, there's no context here, because he just starts in the realm of the universe, nothing really means nothing. Well, okay, I don't know what that means by itself. What are they getting at? Not only matter and energy would disappear, but also space and time. Okay, now I know what they're getting at. Whereas Kent is thinking that's funny, maybe? I don't know. Were people laughing?
Yeah, I think they did. But yeah, it's the same thing as saying, hey, there's nothing in my bowl. Well, there's air in there. Yeah, okay, great. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, and that's the kind of joke I used to make when people didn't like my humor when I was younger.
But the thing is...
I thought I was being clever, but it was kind of at someone's expense. I didn't get that.
But the thing is, in this case, there's actually a real distinction here. Because this isn't saying, oh, there's air there. No. Not only is there not air, there's not even time. That's how much nothing we're talking about. That's an important distinction to be made here. And you shouldn't just mock it because it sounds funny to you.
And you know what? I'll tell you right now, it's really hard for me to understand that.
Oh, yeah.
What is it like to not have space or time? It's so counterintuitive. Well, I would just, no, you wouldn't, because time wouldn't pass.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't be there because there's no space, so there's nowhere for you to be.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be in the nothing. No, that's space. There is no space.
Right. Yeah, it's very counterintuitive.
It's hard to understand.
It's very counterintuitive, and it doesn't make sense to humans because humans aren't equipped to deal with such things.
How about this? I'm holding the 93rd dimension in my hand. Well, there's nothing there, right? That's not a thing. So think of it like that. Nothing really means nothing.
Physicists theorize that from this state of nothingness, the universe began in a gigantic explosion.
I don't like that phrasing.
What?
Oh, Kent will
Yes, boys and
never
girls,
let that
nothing
phrasing go.
exploded, and here we are.
And I love this, that his big response is, what? That's just an argument from incredulity, Kent. You not getting it or being incredulous is not a point against the theory.
Now, who can argue with logic like that? Man, they even put this in major science journals like Science.
Okay, I can principle of charity say if this is from a textbook and it does say the word exploded, that Kent can reasonably assume that's a lie. Do current textbooks say exploded? I don't think so because they've been corrected.
I mean,
right? It's just that
I hope not, but like I said, textbooks get things wrong.
And I don't think it's a lie. It's just that textbook author didn't understand either, right?
Right.
It's not an explosion,
Yeah.
expansion.
Well, the thing is,
I will say I could, through principle of charity, could say maybe that could be lie number one.
maybe.
You know, I don't think it's actually a lie, but I could see why Kent would think it's a lie.
I will say that
But not for the right reason, though, because he doesn't believe it expanded either.
right. I will say that the people who write these textbooks for little kids are not experts in the fields that they're writing on. You know, there's usually like 2 or 3 authors, and they write a life science book, and it will be on like all levels of biology. Whereas when you get to college and you're reading those textbooks, those are written by PhDs in the field who have, you know, numerous publications in technical literature on that subject. And so that's one of the reasons why, you know, textbooks for little kids shouldn't be used as the basis for your understanding of science as an adult. At least if you want to get into the nitty-gritty of the science.
If I had a 3rd grade child that was taught that the universe or the Big Bang exploded instead of expanded, because it's just easier for a kid to kind of grasp what it was like, and they're not going to know what expanded means at all in that context.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd be upset with the teacher for saying that, or a textbook for being written that way.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because it's generally going to give the kid an idea. And when the kid gets older and wants to talk about it, then we could say, well, it technically wasn't even an explosion, it was an expansion, and teach that, right?
Yeah.
So, like, no, you don't want to lie to the kids, but, like...
Well, so there's actually a phrase... There's actually a phrase, it's lies we tell to children. And it's things where it's like, children are not always going to get the nuances. And sometimes we just need them to get the gist of something. And so you simplify it to the point where it's not really true, but it's close enough that they're going to get it enough to continue on. And then they can figure out a more nuanced version later, right?
Right.
So, like, you know, and you get this a lot in history. That's why people usually get their minds blown if they take history courses in college, because they're like, this isn't much like what I learned in 8th grade. It's like, yeah, well, history's complicated. So.
Scientific American, this fellow said, the observable universe...
Scientific American is not a scientific... I'm taking a drink. Scientific American is not a journal. Man, just because it has the word scientific on it doesn't make it a journal. No one's peer-reviewing Scientific American.
If you say so. I wouldn't know any better, because I don't know.
It's a pop-sci magazine. It's like National Geographic.
I don't feel comfortable making claims about Scientific Americans. I don't know anything about them.
Fair enough.
That's all I'm saying.
I happen to know it's on the same tier as Nat Geo. Like, that doesn't make it bad, but you can't say it's a science journal.
That would be us.
No reason
Could
to
have
doubt
evolved. There's that word again. You got to watch that one. Okay, 6 meanings. From an infinitesimal region.
What is the asterisk for? Do we get to know what it's for? I don't see it at the bottom.
Dude, and I hate that. That is like 9 out of 10 asterisks. Anytime I see them, there's no asterisk mark at the bottom. You guys don't know what that means, man. Come on.
In the Greek, that means a dot.
Oh, okay. That was his asterisk. Kent, if you're inserting your own editorial into a quotation, you need to put in brackets so people know that it's not in the original. That's any time that you make a change other than, like, your ellipsis here to show that there was earlier stuff in the sentence. Yeah, anytime you do anything but an ellipsis, brackets.
It's then tempting to go one step further and speculate that the entire universe evolved from literally nothing. They call that science and put it in a science book.
No.
What does that mean?
It's tempting to speculate.
Yeah.
That's not science. That's speculation that might lead to research. But that's not a conclusion. That's someone being like, hey, you know, if this is true based on the evidence, maybe this other thing is too. That would be interesting, huh?
You know why I love speculation? Because it leads to ideas for experiments and predictions and things like that. You know what I hate about speculation is when people, and I was so guilty of this, which is why I can say this, I would make conclusions based on speculations without even realizing it. And once I had to stop and think, like, wait a minute, that's stupid. I've been stupid. I'm going to stop being stupid in this regard, at least.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was doing something dumb and then I stopped, right? And now I'm not doing that anymore, but don't make conclusions based on speculations. It's an easy thing. It was easy for me to do. Yeah. I don't know. It makes sense in my head to, like,
that's not what's happening here. In this quote, no one is using that speculation as a conclusion, but Kent Hovind is apparently presuming that that's what's happening.
I would call that stupid and put it in the garbage.
That's great for you.
This is what the books teach. I collect them. I've got hundreds and hundreds of these books from countries all over the world.
Not even that book taught that, Kent. Not even that book.
Kent could try to give those authors any principle of charity like I've been trying with him.
That's one of the reasons...
Kent, think, what is the most beneficial interpretation you could give them for that? Assume they were trying to be honest, right? Like, wouldn't that be loving your neighbor? Like, not just judging them as wrong no matter what they say, but maybe thinking that they're trying to tell you the truth.
Yeah. Hey, Kent is not exactly the most charitable person. When it came to gifts of the Spirit skipped out on charity when it came to Kent.
From 1890s up until 2001 textbooks, they're teaching this kind of stuff, folks. This one says, all the matter in the universe was drawn into this little tiny dot. And it's fun.
This is my favorite part.
Okay, I'm going to read what's actually on screen here. He said, all the matter in the universe. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, we don't get all, but that's a reasonable thing to put there. So, all matter in the nebula towards its center. So maybe it's pulled all the matter in the nebula. As the nebula shrank, it spun faster and faster. Gradually, the spinning nebula flattened into a huge disk almost 10 billion kilometers across. At the center of the disk, a growing proto-sun, or new sun, began to take shape. As the gas cloud... And this is the best copy of this slide I've ever seen. I can actually now make out all of this. As the gas cloud continued to collapse toward the center, the protosun grew more and more massive. It became denser as well. In time, perhaps after many millions of years, gravitational forces caused the atoms of hydrogen in the protosun to fuse and form helium. This fusion gave off energy in the form of heat and light. A star, our sun, was born.
So
Figure
which step of evolution is this? Is this step one, the Big Bang cosmic evolution, or is this...
This would be his stellar evolution.
Okay, so Kent is, in his own faulty 6 definitions of evolution, is just throwing...
He's mixing up 1 and 3.
3? He's taking 3, saying that it's 1, and that it doesn't make sense. Well, you're right, it doesn't make sense, Kent. Right. Even in your... You're not even being, like...
And I love this.
Logical within your own incorrect definitions. Like...
Figure 3, too. It actually says, the nebular theory suggests how our solar system may have begun, and he thinks this is about the Big Bang.
Faster and faster. This is what they teach the kids. Some kids doing this for homework tonight.
Because if he loves reading that repeatedly, because he loves reading textbooks, he clearly knows it's not saying the Big Bang. It's saying our sun, our solar system.
But here's the thing that boggles my mind.
He's smart enough to know.
He's putting these up on screen for that audience. They could be reading this, but they're not. They're only reading what he wants them to read.
I think they're in a good mood. They've been laughing. They read that, and they're like, I don't understand that. Let's just... All right, I'm going to just put that aside, because that beats me. Because that kind of stuff happened to me a little bit. But
well, it reminds me of when I was doing a video on Genesis apologetics, and they said, look at this pie chart from this book talking about the causes of mass bone graveyards in the fossil record. Look, these two are about water, therefore the flood. But one of the biggest sections was drought. I'm like, hey guys, you put up on screen that one of the major causes of bone bed formation in the fossil record is drought. How is that compatible with the flood of Noah? And it's like, you dry flood.
It's a dry.
It's like,
Oh my
don't
God.
put up the information that debunks you on screen in your presentation. Like, come on.
And faster and faster. One day, it exploded. Big bang.
Boom. Pow. Except that that's not even what was on your slide, Kent. The fact that you had to switch to your own graphic is because the textbook didn't say what you said it said.
I'm so glad those are like zigzag lines and not a circle.
So, here's what really bugs me right here, right? Kent has to know he's lying because he made these slides and he has that textbook that he actually has physical highlights in it. So, presumably, he actually read through it and highlighted these sections. So he knows that section isn't about the Big Bang. But he's using it here to talk about the Big Bang, and he knows he's lying. How can he possibly not? So Kent Hovind isn't just lying because he's been corrected before. This was before he was corrected on that, because he just made these sections of slides up. He went into this presentation knowing that right here, he's going to lie to his audience. And he just doesn't skip a beat.
Talking to a professor from Berkeley one time, I was sitting on the airplane next to
hashtag things didn't happen. Take a drink.
I don't know if you folks here in Idaho ever heard of Berkeley or not.
My kids are so happy
Berkeley is not
that I watched Kent Hovind.
So we got talking about the Big Bang, and he said he believed in the Big Bang Theory. I said, yes, sir, I figured that. You have to teach at Berkeley.
This whole thing just didn't happen. I just do not believe that. That's why I said hashtag things that didn't happen. Took a drink for it. Because none of this is real.
I said, tell me, sir, how did the universe get here? He said, well, 20 billion years ago, all the matter was squished in this little tiny dot, and it was spinning real fast, and it exploded. Big Bang.
See, no, this is another reason I know it didn't happen. Because either this guy was not a professor of anything to do with cosmology, or the very fact that he's using your ridiculous version of the Big Bang that no one thinks is the actual case, Kent, means that you just made up this story. This isn't a real guy.
Or he's the stupidest professor in Berkeley history.
Well, I mean,
and just happened to be next to Kent Hovind on a plane or whatever.
That seems like the least likely option.
Yeah, but it's a possibility, right?
Oh, fair enough.
Last Thursday, nothing existed, and then suddenly Kent Hovind existed with this memory in his brain. That could also have happened.
Yeah, I think that's in about the same realm as last Thursdayism.
Many of these things are equally or similarly unlikely.
Yeah.
And pieces flew off and became the galaxies and the sun, the moon, the stars, and finally, people. Here we are.
Pieces flew off.
I said,
yeah, no, see, this is not what happened. This is not a real conversation. I refuse to believe that this actually happened. Because no professor who's willing to speak with any kind of authority on the Big Bang would be this bad at the Big Bang.
sir, could I ask you a couple questions, please? One of my favorite things to do in life is asking questions to people.
Unless they knew who Kent Hovind was, and so try to talk to him as if he could understand the nuances of a 10-year-old. And maybe they would have used some of those terms.
But pieces flying off and spinning faster, they wouldn't have said either of those things.
I absolutely have a wonderful... That's how this whole ministry started. 12 years ago, I moved to Pensacola, Florida. Some article came out in the newspaper that said, dinosaur bones found in Montana from 80 million years ago. I wrote my first letter to the editor.
That's a weird headline. I feel like it's reasonable that he might have... The core of the story is true, but I don't think that headline is true. Because no one says dinosaur bones found. They're like, oh, new species of whatever found in location. Like, even if it's a fairly ordinary find.
Said that, and that's not what Kent's gonna...
You know what?
When he reads
look,
that.
I'm going to be fair.
And so it's not how he's going to remember it.
I don't think it's important exactly what the headline is. I just don't think that was it. So, you know what? Whatever. We'll just go with it.
I think based on how Kent describes his memories, if they're real or not, kind of gives you a really good insight into how he's going to misinterpret things that he misinterprets.
Yeah.
Not just that he's going to misinterpret the exact way that he will misinterpret it, and then it just makes him even more predictable.
About 12 years ago. I wrote a letter to the editor. I said, yes.
He's got a very specific set of blinders on that is recognizable.
Ooh.
Where
bringing in
it's not just one on each side. No, dude, this is like an entire realm of blinders, right?
Bringing in horse stuff, huh?
All over the place. Maybe.
It's a horse thing.
Maybe.
Blinders on?
Maybe.
I like horses.
No.
Actually, I just told Erica the other day. She was like, sometimes I want to be a blacksmith, but that's expensive and hard. And I was like, be a farrier. That's blacksmith adjacent. Because farriers have to...
That I didn't know.
Yeah. Farriers are people who take care of horse hooves.
That I didn't know.
Yeah. They're, you need your horse's nails trimmed, or new horseshoes attached, or horseshoes balanced, because you have to balance horseshoes. Just like your tires, yeah.
What's the best horseshoe brand? Is it still Nike, or is it like Adidas?
You would have to ask a farrier.
Bones, and yes, it
I don't
was
see a lot
40
of
feet
horseshoe
long, and
commercials.
yes, it was found in Montana, but it was not from 80 million years ago.
Oh.
This one probably drowned in the flood in the days of Noah, 4,400 years ago.
I'm just going
And
to
you
take
would
a
have
drink.
thought I shot the sacred cow. Actually, I did. Boy, there began to be quite a battle in the newspaper, letters to the editor flying back and forth, and finally a university called me and asked me to do a debate with one of their professors. Well, I'd never had a debate in my life except with my wife, and I lost those every time. So I was not excited about debating.
Decent joke.
You know what? He also lost that debate about whether or not he should pay rent to live in his house, and whether or not they'd kick him out. He lost those two debates, too. Ouch.
Isn't there a debate he lost about whether or not he had to pay taxes, or that might have been something else?
Oh.
That may have been.
It was less of a debate and more of a trial, I think.
We all go through our trials, man.
Some of them are in courts.
So, some of us prefer lawyers, though.
Oh, he had a lawyer. He just refused to let the lawyer give any reasonable defenses.
Didn't he try to sue everyone, including his lawyer?
Yeah, he has since tried to sue his lawyer. And that's part of
the
his
other lawyers.
That's part of his $500 million lawsuit.
Which I still don't know much about, if anything's happened with that, if it's already been thrown out.
That's a good. We should look into that. Yeah.
I haven't looked into it in a while, so.
I imagine it's been thrown out because I can't imagine any judge looking at this and being like, "Oh yeah, no, this is reasonable."
Could that be like a trial that somehow needs me on a jury? Just make it a jury trial somehow and put me on there.
You would get kicked out of jury selection so fast.
Maybe.
Yeah, because they would ask you like, "Do you have any preconceived notions about the plaintiff here?" If you're being honest,
There's no way.
you'd be like, yeah."
What do you mean by preconceived notion?
I said, well, how do you do it? What do you
I'm
want?
willing to give him an honest, open-minded. Dude, if I
still.
was on a jury, somehow that Kent Hovind was like on trial for something, I would give him. Give him a fair chance.
Even if that's true, Kent Hovind's lawyer, and even probably the other lawyer, probably wouldn't let you on because if they know that you do a weekly show about Kent Hovind,
I'd give him a fair chance. I couldn't prove that.
Yeah, no.
I know I would, but like
They'd kick you off immediately.
I'm not gonna.
You're not gonna get past jury selection. Yeah.
And the guy said, well, you send us 30 questions, and the other guy will send in 30
Kent,
questions.
I like
We'll
jury
discuss those
nullification.
questions.
I mean, it could help.
Well, this would be a lawsuit, not a criminal case.
I don't care.
For the debate. I said, okay. So I sent him 30 questions. I thought they were perfectly legitimate, fair questions. I said, a woodpecker's tongue goes all the way around the back of his head and comes on top of his left eyebrow, left nostril here.
Okay.
Would you please show me any fossils that have been found, intermediate species between a normal bird and a woodpecker, with his tongue going all the way around his head?
Yeah, we just got fossil tongues laying all over the place. Fossil tongues everywhere. But here's the other thing. That condition of the tongue is a condition that develops ontologically after the bird hatches. Baby woodpeckers that hatch out of the egg have a normal bird tongue that starts at the back of their mouth and goes to the front. As they age and become adults, the root location actually stretches back and the tongue gets longer and longer. You can actually watch it happen in like x-rays of birds. We don't have to wonder about how it evolved. All we have to do is say, well, since ontology gives us information about the evolutionary sequence of events, and we can check to see how it actually develops ontologically, we can infer that that's probably how it developed phylogenetically. Problem solved. The same thing happens with mammals and their ear bones. Embryologically, two of your ear bones start out in the jaw of the embryo, but before the jaw joint really forms, they migrate into the middle ear, and then the dentary and squamosal jaw joint forms in mammals. Whereas in the embryological development of reptiles, birds included, those jaw bones stay in the jaw, drink for Godzilla, and they develop into the jaw bones. So, yeah, and we have fossils where the jaw bones of proto-mammals get smaller and migrate towards the ear. So yeah, we don't have to wonder about this one.
What evidence do you have of how this evolved? That question never came up. I don't know what happened to it. But
Probably because it was stupid.
I said, termites chew on wood and they swallow it, but termites can't digest it. It goes into their stomach, and there's little tiny critters in their intestines that actually digest the cellulose.
Mm-hmm.
Now, those little critters can't live without the termite, and those termites can't live without those critters. Which one evolved first?
What do you mean? The symbiotic relationship between gut microbes and macroscopic animals long predates the origin of freaking termites. Okay.
How do you know? Were you there?
So
Ask the rocks.
So here's the thing, right? Cellulose digestion is a thing that most organisms have at least a few gut microbes that can handle, right? But most organisms that aren't relying on really low-calorie food like grass or wood don't have an overabundance of them, and they're not terribly specialized. That's why you can reasonably well digest most plants, but you're not going to get anything out of chowing down on some mulch. Now, termites, at least some species of termites, specialize in eating wood. But as they're evolving in this direction, towards better and better wood digestion, their gut microbes become more and more specialized for digesting cellulose. But when they started out as basically just cockroaches, because, spoiler alert, termites are basically cockroaches. They're just very specialized cockroaches. When they started out as basically just eusocial cockroaches that were not terribly morphologically distinct, they would have had a more generalist diet. But the niche of wood eater is pretty wide open. There aren't a whole lot of wood-eating organisms out there. Not even beavers eat wood. But there's a lot of energy locked up there, just kind of diffuse. And so yeah, the microbes that already existed then went on to help them digest. And if the question is how does a symbiotic relationship between bacteria in the gut of an animal and animals get started in the first place, all that you have to realize is animals have trouble digesting certain things that they ingest. And microbes in the gut will get ready-made food being sent to them by an animal every day. Well, I mean, as often as it eats. Not every animal eats every day, and that's all you need. Then there's selection pressure for the microbes to get better at digesting, and there's selection pressure for the microbes to benefit the host, so that the host can then go on and reproduce, creating new habitats for those same microbes. And that's it. That's all that's required for you to get a symbiotic relationship between gut microbes and animals. And we are going to take a quick intermission, which I may or may not edit out. Actually, I'm just going to edit it out because I'm lazy. I want to take a moment during this first month of a brand new year to thank my patrons and my channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bent Prerecorded, Ian Chen, Sphincter of Doom, and Henry Hutanen. You guys really helped me get through the last year, and it was a rough one, and I cannot thank you enough. Now, if anyone here is listening and isn't supporting but would like to, there's a link to my Patreon down in the description, as well as the option to join the channel underneath this video. If those aren't right for you, there's also a Teespring store, and if none of that works for you, please just like and share this video, because that helps this channel grow, and that really helps out. And we're back! Oh, that was a long break. What did we take, like 5 hours or something?
It was 7 years, I think.
7 years, my goodness. You're in remarkably the same shirt. 7 minutes?
A really high quality shirt. Yeah, 7 minutes. I don't know. 7 hours.
I was trying to make them think that we were gone for we just left and came back hours later.
Well, I mean, I don't even remember what year it is. That's how long we've been gone. How about that?
It's the year of our Lord 2021.
Okay.
Or Anno Domini, if you want to do the whole Latin thing, if that's your big thing. I don't know.
Not necessarily, but I do like the pizza.
Okay. All right, here we go.
I thought it was a fair question, but it never came up. I don't know what happened. I think they lost my list.
I think they would have preferred that you actually ask questions that get at the heart of the issue, like since you said that they were bones from the flood of Noah, maybe you should be asking questions about the flood, or the geological column, or the fossil record, instead of random trivia questions about how some one thing evolved. And this is me just presuming that this interchange happened.
But anyway, one of my favorite things to do is ask
I'm
you
not
questions.
convinced that this whole thing hasn't still been the things that never happened category. He just kind of went from one story to it. Is this still the second one, or is he on a third one? Like,
I think this is a third story. Well, so here's one thing about this.
Some of them may have happened to some degree.
This story doesn't seem as far-fetched as the others. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not, like, just immediately jumping to just things that didn't happen. This one is like, did this happen?
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
Maybe.
Like, it kind of feels like it, but it kind of feels like parts of the story seem... Well, you know how he tells the stories. The ones that are obvious never happens, or obvious never happens. You know, you can see through it.
Right. The reason I think this is more likely is because I actually don't see any reason why Kent Hovind wouldn't write to the editor of a newspaper if it had something he disagreed with.
Right.
Like,
and he had to have his first debate sometime, right?
Right, it had to happen.
Maybe this is that origin story. It's not one I've heard before.
This is just as good a story as X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Even evolution. So I asked this professor if I could ask him some questions about the Big Bang. He said, sure, what would you like to know?
What? Okay, now we're getting into things that didn't happen. Or are we going back to the professor on the airplane? Because if someone wanted to debate you because you thought that dinosaur bones were buried in the flood of Noah, why would the Big Bang be something they want to talk to you about? That doesn't make any sense. But, okay, I'm just... Who knows, maybe.
I said, well, sir, you told...
didn't happen.
No.
Like 20 billion years ago, all the matter in the universe was squished in this little tiny dot.
No, Kent, he didn't tell you that. At least not in this story, not yet. You're talking about the professor on the plane now, and you're conflating him with the professor that allegedly contacted you for a debate after your letters to the editor. He can't even keep his own BS stories. I'm taking a drink. Like, Kent, internal coherence. You're internally incoherent. Your story doesn't make sense.
Doesn't mean you shouldn't, Kent. But
it was spinning faster and faster and exploded. I said, where did all this matter come from? He said, well, we don't know that for sure.
Yeah, good answer.
I said, hold it. If I told you that I
believe like gasping then
6,000 years ago, God created the heaven and the earth like the Bible teaches, you're going to say, and where did God come from? And I don't know.
Taking a drink, because that is not what I would say.
I do like him saying he doesn't know where God came from.
I mean, fair.
That is him being honest.
Yeah, but
right
that's not...
I recognize that, and I'll credit him for that.
Look, if you want to counter young Earth creationism, and your response to someone saying that the Earth was created 6,000 years ago and flooded 4,400 years or whatever ago, and your response is to say, well, where did God come from? No, there are much better responses.
I don't care about that. I care about if someone does do that and you say, I don't know, then you're being honest.
That's fair.
That's my point.
Unless you think you do know.
I guess, but...
But the thing is,
if Kent says, I don't know, he's probably never been more honest in his life.
That's true.
When he's using those words. And so anytime...
You know what?
Look, anytime someone says, I don't know, on something like this, no matter who they are, what channel they are, I appreciate that because they are being honest.
Maybe the professor can explain for the audience where God came from.
Yeah, maybe.
But so here's the thing: if your objection to this as a non-YEC is that you don't know that the person you're talking to doesn't know where God comes from, that's not going to be a great objection. Talk about the geology. Talk about the astronomy. Talk about the radiometric dating. Talk about the observed instances of evolution. Talk about
the science. Talk about the science.
Yeah, don't do the whole where did God come from? Yeah.
It's a good idea. Science and normal science.
But you said 20 billion years ago there was a Big Bang. And you don't know where the dirt came from.
There was no dirt. What dirt? Take another drink. There was no dirt in the Big Bang, Kent. And the thing is, he said himself that he knows that according to the Big Bang created some mostly hydrogen and a little bit of helium. I've never heard hydrogen or helium described as dirt.
Actually, I believe the ratios Kent gave, I said were wrong, and it turns out I was wrong and he was right.
What?
On an episode of Kent and Bent. And I think there was some correction in the chat later on. So that was weird. That was weird for me to get something wrong that Kent got right in science. It's not the first time. It also happened with escape velocity and my misunderstanding of that too.
Escape velocity is weird. I knew someone who thought that you needed to reach escape velocity to get to the moon. I was like, why would you?
I was thinking like orbital velocity and like KSP, and I wasn't thinking of it the correct way. And he was, which is weird, but it happens.
Yeah, I actually had to. Well, I guess I didn't have to, but I did actually correct someone once that you do not need to reach escape velocity to get to the moon. I mean, you can get there that way. I mean, you can. You don't have to. I don't think anyone ever has.
Land there? You might need to break quite a bit.
Well, I mean, you could just hard break into orbit. Do a really big orbital insertion burn.
I was assuming.
You're just going to fly straight there?
I was assuming you're going to reach escape velocity in this scenario and then stay at that velocity and then try to go
and then just
past the moon. Because if you're going to try to land on it without,
I guess you could just do a gigantic suicide burn. Just flip and
that would be another burn.
Yeah.
I mean, what you could do is you could do a gravity assist or gravity braking
on the moon.
If you, going past the moon, if you face,
you couldn't land there that way though.
But if you did it right, you could go like thousands of years of like slow gravity braking around the moon. You'd have to have perfect prediction of the stability of the system, which is impossible.
Let's just say this: if anyone here in the audience ever decides to plan a trip to the moon, do not include.
KSP I'm still talking about.
Just do not plan your trip to the moon to include reaching escape velocity. It's a bad idea.
You waste way too much fuel, and unless you've got the best litho braking system ever, probably not going to work well.
In case anyone isn't up on the terms, litho braking is just code for crashing.
It's technically, it can also be like a little bit of bouncing to slow down that last little bit if you have the right system.
Yeah, but it's usually crash.
It's usually crash. The crash will slow you down.
Yeah.
In the beginning, God, and you believe in the beginning, dirt.
No, I'm taking a drink.
Don't tell me my theory is religious and yours is science. Oh, no, sir.
You had several steps of straw manning in that whole thing to set that up.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not... The Big Bang is science because it's backed up by actual observations, like the actual observed expansion of the universe, the redshift, the CMB, or the cosmic microwave background radiation. All of these things all back up the Big Bang. And it's more or less an inevitable result of general relativity, which says that the universe must either be expanding or contracting. It cannot be stationary.
Religious.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
The news media tries to make it look like it is religion versus science. I did a debate in El Paso, Texas here recently.
I think that you're doing that, Kent.
Yeah.
You're the one doing that.
I've been to El Paso.
Not the media.
It's okay. I wouldn't want to stay there.
Media wrote an article, they said, religious and scientific leaders debate evolution.
Okay.
What is the unspoken message in that title? What are they trying to imply? Can you catch that?
What do you think they're trying to imply?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, no, I'm just thinking about driving through El Paso right now. I got to catch up a little bit.
Okay.
Religious and scientific leaders debate evolution. You want me to read that article?
No, just what do you think they're trying to imply in that headline?
Well, this is part of science. Religious and scientific leaders debate evolution. I think they're trying to debate. Well, there's a group of religious people and scientific leaders that are wanting to debate how life has changed through time, and that Kent seems to not know that.
Well, let's see what Kent's take is.
Is that what you're asking? Is that what you're trying to get me to say?
Well, I was just seeing if you thought that this implied anything, and it seems like you don't think it implies anything that isn't already just explicitly stated.
I don't know what he's trying to do. Well, because it says it's trying to look like science versus evolution. I don't see an implication there.
Yeah.
Evolution is part of science, aren't they?
Well, let's back up a little bit.
Evolution is a religion. message in that
No,
title.
no,
What
no,
are they trying
no,
to
wait, hold on.
imply?
Hold on, listen.
Can you
If
catch
they're
that?
implying that
They're trying
evolution
to
is part of
imply
science,
that evolution is part of science, aren't they?
No, they're not. They're implying.
if they're also implying that religious people are equally scientific as scientific leaders, which I don't think anyone should think that, because scientific leaders wouldn't have the same religious authority that religious figures would, right?
Yeah.
So they're not implying that, Kent.
Yeah, there's a reason that people don't often take, say, Richard Dawkins seriously when he talks about theology, because he's bad at it. He tends not to know what people actually believe. But, yeah.
No, evolution is a religion. Actually, both creation and evolution are inherently religious.
So
Taking a
that's what
drink.
Kent's interpretation is. He's interpreting that scientific leaders are religious, religious leaders are religious, which that part's true, and therefore evolution is religious. No.
No, that doesn't
Kent,
work.
No. You're not being honest. You're hearing people say things about what they're representing. You're intentionally saying, no, you're not, putting him in this false category and attacking that. That is not honest. It is dishonest.
These two timelines is the same information right here. I'll be referring to that throughout the seminar here. I cover this thing all the time. The Bible teaches
He's
about
right about that.
6,000
You will
years
be
ago, God
referring to
made
these
everything.
timelines a lot.
Yes.
4,400 years ago, there was a big flood that destroyed everything. 2,000 years ago, Jesus came. Here we are today, waiting for the Lord to come back in about 5 minutes. This is the Bible view of history. On this chart, 1 inch is 150 years. That's a long time. The 20
They're going to laugh because he's talking about numbers.
They might.
He's going to mention the other chart, and I bet they're going to laugh.
If they
That's
do,
my prediction.
we'll take a drink for it.
on the bottom.
My
It's a very
first
different scale.
prediction I have. No, I
But see, both views, creation and evolution, are inherently religious. You have to believe in
Just kinda
creation
glossed
or
over it.
believe in evolution. The difference between the two, though, is very simple. The evolution religion is tax supported.
No, I'm just going to let it go.
That's the difference. By the
Pick
way,
your
if I was to
battles,
make
right?
that bottom chart
Yeah.
the same scale
Just
as the
gonna
top
let it go.
chart, the bottom chart actually needs to be 2,100 miles long. That's from Pensacola to Portland, Oregon.
They didn't laugh that time.
I don't want to carry a chart that big,
Darn
so
it.
I made a new scale for the other one.
I got
Okay?
another prediction wrong.
If they want to believe it happened long ago and far away, they're
Sorry,
welcome to
Bent.
believe that.
I don't know why they didn't laugh.
No, and he's going to say something like that again, and they're going to laugh that time, and I'm going to point it out.
I'm actually kind of baffled by this audience because sometimes they just laugh at numbers, and then other times when you think they would, they just don't. Yeah.
I don't get them.
I don't
Because if it's not the number, they just think it's absurd. That number is absurd. Why would they not think this number is absurd and laugh at that too?
Yeah, I don't get it.
Is there like a clown juggling off camera?
You know, there
Being
might
funny?
be. There
And
might
happens
be.
when he says certain numbers. Is there like a box of the word like DVD and it's going hitting the edge and almost hitting the corner and then
And then right when he says 2 trillion, it goes right into the corner.
right in the corner and they clap and the people on the plane clap and then Kent stands up and bows and they say, "Please, sir, keep your seatbelt fastened." And he says, "I apologize, ma'am." And then they finish their flight. That's how it works, right, Kent?
Something like that. I like how you tied it into his imaginary plane ride with a Berkeley professor.
Well, I wanted to go back to that because I want him to talk about how the people clapped when they were done, I guess, but maybe he wasn't going to say that.
Science,
That's inferred,
evolution is a
yeah.
religious worldview, and I think it is stupid. So I asked the professor, where did the matter come from? He said, I don't know. I said, well, sir, would you please tell me where the laws came from? The universe is run by laws, gravity, centrifugal force, inertia. Who gave the laws? He said, we don't know that either.
Who gave the
I said,
laws?
"Sir."
Why did the laws have to have been given by someone?
Oh, because laws are written by humans, therefore the laws of nature actually were written by God.
But the laws of nature, the word law there doesn't at all really mean the same as it does for like legal laws.
Yeah, but this is the guy who thinks that dinosaurs are literally lizards because the word dinosaur means terrible lizard.
That's okay. All right. That's all I need to know.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the
That answers my
guy.
question.
Yeah, that's the level that Kent Hovind is on here. Which actually I'm going to drink for it cuz yeah, that's stupid.
I'm sorry, man. It's stupid. I don't like saying that's stupid because that's kind of mean, but it's stupid.
Hey, this
Or
whole
dishonest. Which one would I rather have it be? I don't know.
I think
I'd like to say ignorance, but how can you keep saying that?
Yeah,
I mean, unless he's got no ability to form memories, like
maybe that's it. Maybe Kent
maybe
is the guy from Memento.
Maybe he's got some kind of injury where he can't form, like he can like remember people he talks to or whatever, but he can't like learn
new facts,
new science or whatever. He'll learn them and he'll be baffled, and then you could prove them, and then the next debate he'll just forget it. He just can't learn it. Maybe
that would certainly be. Wait, is there a Chinese flag on that door?
I recognize the flag, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's the Chinese flag. Let me.
I have a feeling that if you could pan this camera to the left, there'd be quite a few flags. And here's what I'm thinking: they're putting flags up of countries that they have missionaries they've sent to. How about that?
Oh, that could be because I just double checked, and yes, that is very much the flag of China.
That could be what they've done. I think I could see a church doing that, and that's
okay. Well, it's just bizarre to me that
that there's a flag of China there,
right?
Randy?
Especially since the kind of crowd here are usually not the kind of crowd that are big fans of communist dictatorships. Not that anyone should be, but this particular group of people are usually really, really dead set against that.
I had people in the church growing up that I knew of missionaries to India and missionaries to China, and one to Hong Kong, and then later some to Romania that our church had known or like had been involved with that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm assuming that they're similar flags.
Okay, that's fair. All right. Yeah, it was just.
We probably won't see actually, but
it just struck me initially as a little bizarre to have a communist flag up in a church in a Kenthoven speech, but whatever, it's fine.
Tell me where the energy came from. It takes energy to make a big bang. Who bought the gas to run this machine anyway?
It takes energy to make a big bang.
He said.
Okay, so
I don't know if that's true.
Look, the Big Bang started with a whole bunch of energy. No one's really arguing against that. Although, actually, in another way, it started with and remains at zero energy. Because
to say it started with all the energy in the universe, which it did, doesn't to me, it doesn't equate to it needed energy to happen or whatever.
But the question of where the energy came from is separate from the question, did the Big Bang happen? I use this analogy all the time, right? Where like you find a car in the ditch, and you see that it skidded off the road on a patch of ice. So you make the conclusion this car was coming along, lost control at the ice, slid into the ditch, and there you go. That's how the car got there.
Mm-hmm.
But then Kent comes along and says, "Yeah, but you don't know where the car left from it this morning, so it doesn't count. We don't get to conclude that." It's like it doesn't matter to this car accident. The origin of the car is independent of why the car is in the ditch. Currently, we have a universe that has expanded and is expanding from a hot, dense state to its current relatively sparse and cool state. Where the initial energy that made it hot and dense came from doesn't matter to that story.
Right.
Not every book has to start with the formation of the universe. Like I don't go around and be like, "Oh, Agatha Christie sucks because she didn't start with the origin of the universe before she got to her murder mystery."
You open the book and it says, "I'd like to start at the beginning, but even that's not far back enough." First, there was nothing, which exploded. Eventually, no novel is going to start like that.
No.
Not unless it's a parody. I should write that parody novel.
Do it.
We don't know that either.
Okay.
I said, "Sir, could I ask you another question?" He said, "Sure. What else would you like to know?" Else? What do you mean else? You haven't told me nothing yet.
Yes, he's told you that there are a number of open questions in cosmology. That's information that you might not have had.
That is information he still doesn't have because he rejects it when he hears it.
I'm going to take a drink. Just because it's so stupid to be told X is an open question and then to think that you weren't told anything.
And he probably said, "No one knows that yet. We're still trying to answer that, and we got some ideas."
Yeah, probably.
You're probably planning on testing that, like depending on how the conversation went. If he was as charismatic as Kent is, it could have been a very charismatic conversation.
So much charisma. Charisma 20,
Right.
+4. Wait, no, that's +5. +5.
Wait, that's even more pretty good.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? I got my character with a 16 charisma. It's gonna take a while before he ever gets to 20.
I don't even remember
I do.
what mine would be.
Well, I'm just talking about the characters we rolled up for Josh's game that is totally gonna happen.
I don't remember what my character was.
No.
I said, does Berkeley have a merry-go-round? How many of you know what a merry-go-round is? You go round and round until you puke, okay? He said, no, we don't have a merry-go-round at Berkeley.
Oh, I haven't done
I
a
said, you ought
tracking
to get
game
one.
because
You
I've
just learned some
stopped
good science on a merry-go-round.
Yeah, he is conflating the plane because at no point was it ever established that the person he was debating as a result of his letters was a Berkeley professor. But now we're back to the Big Bang and the spinning that his pretend Berkeley professor said existed. So you know what? I think that debate didn't happen. I think that is #things that didn't happen because Kent can't separate it from his stupid imaginary plane conversation. He's presenting this as a continuation of that conversation. And for that to be real, we would have to presume that this random Berkeley professor that he sat next to on a plane who didn't understand the Big Bang in the first place, then saw Kent Hovind's letter to the editor in a Texas newspaper? No, it was a Florida newspaper. So some Berkeley guy is reading some random local newspaper from Florida, noticing the letters to the editor of some idiot, and decides to debate him, presumably flying over to Florida from Berkeley, which, in case, not everyone's up on their U.S. geography, especially since, many people, not Americans. Berkeley and Florida are about as far apart as you can get while still being on the continental United States. This is not like, they're not neighbors exactly here. They're on opposite sides of the country. So, yes, this is another, I'm taking a drink for it. #things that just didn't happen. I cannot believe how bad this is. I've never sat and watched this video.
How far into this video are we?
14 minutes, almost 15 minutes.
Nice.
Yeah.
The timestamp's too blurry on my screen.
If you put some fourth graders on a merry-go-round, are there any fourth graders in here tonight? Who's in fourth grade? All right, I like fourth graders. I spent the best 5 years of my life in the fourth grade.
I think it's been longer than 5 years, Kent.
You know what? #things that did happen.
I think it's longer than 5 years, Kent. I think a lot of your reasoning and mentality is a fourth grade level.
And, he's still reading fourth grade level textbooks.
Well, he's at least presenting from them if those are the actual textbooks he's using.
Yeah.
I haven't confirmed that, but yeah.
That's before they diagnosed ADD. What's in fourth grade?
Did he just make fun of attention deficit disorder?
No, the problem is that when there's a pause and we talk about things, I forget the previous sentence.
Okay, fair enough.
So I don't know the context of that joke. But he may have.
It was about how he spent the best 5 years of his life in fourth grade.
Fourth grade, okay.
All right, look, poor taste, but actually, when Kent was in fourth grade, I do believe ADD was not, in fact, a diagnosis. So
it's possible,
technically, there probably were some kids who were held back for ADD who could have been treated if it had been known. Not really something that I think is funny, but,
On the merry-go-round. I like using fourth graders because they're tough and they're expendable. And we're going to get the high school football team out there to get that thing spinning clockwise as fast as it will possibly go. Now, if you have a digital watch, you may not know what clockwise
He's
means.
got this audience in I'm in a stand-up comedy routine while he's preaching the truth about God mood. And so that's why they're laughing at everything. I still don't understand the numbers that they're laughing at. But this is one of the more charismatic. If Kent knew how to tell, or if Kent had well-written jokes, he could have been a pretty successful comic because he had the delivery down. I think.
Yeah.
Problem is usually stupid. Usually, and it's like, look, you can have delivery, but not be a world-class joke teller. So you might not be a stand-up comic. I'm not saying stupid because it's not a comic.
Imagine a better world
back then, at least,
where Kent Hovind wasn't a snake oil salesman selling lies
right?
Instead, he was just a stand-up comic telling family-friendly jokes for Christians.
Like a Jim Gaffigan kind of deal. Well,
I don't know who that is, but
he's a comic who he's. There's several comics that will always stay clean. They just won't use swearing, and it's just. I think the way to think about it is like, if something's a lot funnier because I swear, I could maybe get lazy with that. And if I can keep things funny that are clean, then it could be comedy for all ages, not just for kids, but stuff that adults would laugh to also. That's still clean. Like that's a probably really challenging thing to do.
Yeah.
And I would assume that some of the comics out there have made it their goal to try to do that. And
imagine that better world where Kent Hovind was just that guy.
Dude, that would be potentially great.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that is not the timeline that we live in. Instead, we live in.
What I need to do is get close to Geordie's visor. I could shift to a different dimension, a different universe where there's a better version of Kent.
Why doesn't that happen more if that's how you shift into different?
Geordie's visor, it doesn't exist yet.
No, I mean in Star Trek. Why was it that one time? Because it's not like Geordie and Worf haven't stood next to each other before.
Oh, because he had to have passed through the weird anomaly at the beginning, and
okay.
And somehow it was like where the ship was in space when he left it, and Geordie's visor was involved a little bit. I don't remember.
You know what?
It wasn't the best explanation, but it was science fiction.
I'd like to imagine the engineers who are like making Geordie's visors, and one of them says, "Hey, you know what? If this thing were exposed to this weird kind of energy field, wouldn't it allow you to travel into alternate dimensions?" And then someone's like, "Yeah, but that probably won't happen." And, yeah, okay. And then they just continue on, and then like 30 years later, there's Worf hopping around dimensions.
Well, I think when the episode was written, the multiverse theory was not necessarily taken. I don't want to say it wasn't taken seriously, but there wasn't necessarily a lot of support for it, compared to recent support for it, at least.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that reminds me.
So in Star Trek, Data kind of says, "Well, there was he doesn't quite say the words, an old theory, but he kind of mentions it as if it were like a theory not people don't really know about much.
Right.
There's a theory that I didn't can happen, will happen." In a branching timeline. So maybe in that universe they had kind of dismissed that as an old theory.
Yeah. Which actually, this brings up one of the tropes that I hate with Star Trek Discovery, which is someone will write an article about how, now Star Trek Discovery has done this for the first time in Star Trek. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So originally it was like, oh, hey, look, this is the first, they tried it. This is the first female-headed Star Trek, and I was like, "Did you forget Voyager?" And they're like, "But it's the first time. It's the first time that a black person,
Captain Janeway, a woman."
But and then there was another article. It was like, "Yeah, but it's the first time that a black person has headed up Star Trek." And I was like, "Did you forget Deep Space Nine?" But then it was like, "It's the first time a black woman." I'm like, "Okay, I guess, but you could have just started there."
Sure. Yeah, you could have started there, right? And it's not like you have 7,000 Star Trek shows to deal with.
But then recently,
not that many.
Recently, I saw an article that said Star Trek Discovery confirms multiverse. I'm like, I'm sorry, but Star Trek The Next Generation confirmed multiverse for Star Trek. Like, come on, dude. So, whatever. We'll just keep going with this. We've only got a little bit left, and then we're...
forgotten over time.
Yeah.
And it's, I think, important to try to correct that in real time when you can.
Yeah.
And if people are going to forget about Star Trek, what happened in the history of Star Trek, that's not cool, man.
Well, not if you're going to write an article about Star Trek. If you're just some dude, whatever.
It's a personal thing. It's not that big a deal. But yeah, if you're going to write an article about it, you'd think that you could at least ask your Star Trek nerd if what you're saying is wrong in any way.
Heck, hop onto a Star Trek nerd Facebook page or Reddit and just ask.
I'm sure, you know what, they got the deadlines, they got to send it to their editor, and their editor doesn't care at all about Star Trek.
That's fair.
They're typos maybe, so who knows. But
I'll explain it later. We're going to spin the merry-go-round clockwise. The kids are going to go through 4 phases. They start off in phase 1. They're screaming at the football players. Come on, let's go. Faster, faster. Can't you go any faster? You get up around 30 miles an hour. The kids enter phase 2, where they stop screaming.
What does that mean?
They just quietly
and first of all, who can run at 30 miles an hour?
Maybe they're not running. Maybe they're just hauling on the bars while their feet are planted.
I heard him do this before. Did he say it was like a hypothetical? Because isn't he going to say they're going to get up to like 100 miles an hour eventually? Which obviously no human can run that fast. And
Yeah.
Kent knows that.
Also, that's not how rotational. That's not how rotational velocity is calculated.
The other thing too is like, yeah, but if Kent thinks a human can run 100 miles an hour and someone can prove that to me, I don't know if I can do Kent like that anymore. I would have to take a significant break.
I think.
from that.
Well, since this is a hypothetical, I think I will give him the benefit of the doubt and say he doesn't think that humans can run at 30 or 100 miles an hour.
All right.
Concentrate
Ah.
on trying to hang on for dear life. If you get up around 60 miles an hour, the kids enter phase 3, where they start screaming again. But now they're screaming, stop, stop, please, slow down. Don't stop, though. Keep going faster and faster. When you get to about 100 miles an hour, you should enter phase 4. That's where the kids begin to fly off the merry-go-round. Now, when this happens, you will notice a very interesting phenomena of physics. If the merry-go-round is going clockwise, when the kid flies off, the kid will be spinning clockwise until he encounters resistance, like a tree or telephone pole. That's because of a law in physics known as the conservation of angular momentum. You see, if a spinning...
This is a really, really dark hypothetical. I'm just going to point that out there. He's basically like, let's murder a bunch of 4-year-old or 4th graders.
They are expendable, right? Or whatever, disposable, or whatever you said.
But it's it's weird how much he doubles down on the whole, like, we're going to kill kids, especially in the wake of recent events at Dinosaur Adventureland.
Well, I mean, that hadn't happened when he did this. But,
yeah, but in retrospect...
But also, he's getting things right about conservation of angular momentum.
We'll take a drink for that.
That's the weirdest part of this whole thing.
Yeah, take a drink for Kent Hovind being broadly correct about conservation of angular momentum. Good job, Kent. You did it. Proud of you.
An object breaks apart in a frictionless environment, the fragments will all spin the same direction. It's very simple. It's because the outside is moving faster than the inside. And so it keeps the same direction of spin. The professor said, yes, I understand about the conservation of angular momentum. I said, well, good. I'd like to ask you a question then, sir. If the whole universe began as a swirling dot, like you said, why do two planets spin backwards?
I just read the first sentence of that paragraph, and I want to rip my brain out.
Is it because it wasn't about the Big Bang?
We'll have to go back to it, and I'll just read it out loud, because it's absurdly stupid.
I'm willing.
All right, this angular momentum would have caused the sun to spin very rapidly. Actually, our sun spins very slowly, while the planets move very rapidly around the sun. Do I have to say why that whole thing is stupid?
Is it because he's trying to talk about the Big Bang, but instead he's talking about the solar system again?
It's not even that. It's not even that. It's not. It's actually less stupid than that, because that's pretty stupid.
What is it this time?
Because does our sun spin very rapidly right now, or does it spin slowly? Like, what is he trying to say in this?
Yeah, it's sort of like
because
compared to what?
Because we had freaking angular momentum in our solar system, right?
Yeah.
So the speed of the sun, because it's not the entire solar system, even though it makes up most of the mass of it, there's also mass pretty far out. And that matters for angular momentum. Does it not? Am I wrong on that? Because I might be wrong on that. But
yeah, so if you're trying to conserve angular momentum, a mass spinning quickly in one part of the system can preserve angular momentum for a much larger mass spinning.
And then bringing them back in and all that, right? And speeding up. And so our sun doesn't have to spin very rapidly. Like, where does that come from?
I don't know.
Okay. Like, how...
Well, to be fair, this is not Kent. This is Dr. Stuart Ross Taylor from Cambridge University. So
I could be misunderstanding this, but it sounds to me is what it sounds like is that Kent is basically saying there's a certain speed our sun must have been spinning at that was very rapid, and compared to that rapid speed, it's spinning.
Oh, you're giving him way too much credit. He's not actually using this slide for anything other than to say conservation of angular momentum.
Okay. All right.
He's saying nothing about the body of this text. He doesn't care.
Am I getting way too deep into this right now?
Yeah, you're giving Kent way too much credit. You're thinking that what's on this slide is actually relevant past the pretty picture. This slide is solely here for that picture. That's it.
Well, is he going to read this or not?
No, I guarantee you he won't.
For whatever reason, I assumed he was going to read through it.
I guarantee you he will not read that.
Okay.
If he eats that, or if he reads that, I will eat a can of tuna. Live on air. No, probably not that.
The sun has
I said, well, good. I'd like to ask you a question then, sir. If the whole universe began as a swirling dot, like you said...
Which no professor would say. Again, things that didn't happen. Take a drink. And don't at me with, oh, some professor said a dumb thing once. Yeah, okay, fine. You know what I mean.
Why do two planets spin backwards? He said, that's interesting.
First...
Did he, Kent?
No, he didn't. Whether or not
You've
Uranus...
never thought of it before, Kent. This is projection, because Kent had never thought of what it would be like to see a skeleton and decide if that skeleton was a dinosaur or not. Because, well, that's an interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
So the thing about Uranus is that its poles are basically on the same axis as its orbital plane, so whether or not it spins backwards is kind of like... you basically can't define it, right?
Right.
Venus does spin very slowly backwards. And the reason for both of these things is impact. Because if two objects impact, one can end up spinning in the opposite direction as long as that imparts extra angular momentum with spin prograde, which is what you call the normal preferred spin direction in this whole system. As long as that imparts extra prograde rotation to the object that was the impactor, right? So yeah, what's currently generally the consensus is that Venus had an impact. Now, it is the case that the nebular hypothesis would suggest that, on average, everything in the solar system should basically have the same axis of rotation, roughly, and that rotation be in the same direction as the orbit. And that is true for most things. Everything in the solar system, more or less, with very few, very small exceptions, orbits in a way so that it's counterclockwise or anti-clockwise if you're looking at the North Pole. So you're looking down to the North Pole of Earth, say. Basically, everything in the solar system is rotating or orbiting around the sun counterclockwise, and it's rotating on its axis counterclockwise. And there are a few exceptions, but that's easily explainable under the law of conservation of angular momentum because things collide. That's all that's required.
It's conservation for the system.
Drink.
In this perspective, we're looking at the solar system, right? The whole system has its own conservation of angular momentum. Is it perfect? No. Why? Because there's other star systems nearby that are affecting it. There's a galaxy that's affecting it. Yep. All this stuff has... further out, the more subtle these changes are going to be. Depending on how much mass there is, like obviously the greatest attractor is very far, and there's a lot of mass there.
Oh, and also,
he
didn't read the slide, so I'm taking a drink for correct prediction. Because, yeah, that slide was just there for the pretty picture.
Mm-hmm. So, no, that's more than interesting. It's kind of hard on your Big Bang Theory. Not only that,
no, it's not anything on the Big Bang Theory, because the Big Bang Theory doesn't posit the universe was spinning. This entire story is just based on his ludicrous misunderstanding of what the Big Bang Theory is.
Things are spinning backwards. Why?
Because of capture. Things capture into orbit from other orbits, and in some of those cases, you'll end up capturing into a retrograde orbit. Now look, I'm not going to get into like the crazy math, but yeah, that's just a thing.
What's it called in KSP when you head out to the moon and you go in front of it and then you kind of do like a figure eight around it and come back, so you have the free return?
Yeah, it's a free return trajectory.
Yeah, free return trajectory. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
the thing
if
is,
these bodies interact in that direction, it can cause things to rotate back.
Yep. Yeah.
Orbit backwards.
In fact, you can use that to get into a retrograde orbit. In general.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, retrograde orbits of moons aren't exactly hard. All that's required is that the moon be a captured satellite. And suddenly, it's uninteresting that there are. Well, it's not uninteresting, but it's not unexpected that there would be a few retrograde orbiting moons. Like, it's just a thing.
He said, I don't know. Why do you think they're going backwards?
You didn't know. Who was this guy again?
He was the guy who challenged him to a debate based on fossils, but who was also previously in an airplane with him, coincidentally, who was from Berkeley Professor.
Was he a professor of it?
We don't know. We don't know.
You said it. I missed it.
Underwater basket weaving, probably.
No, maybe.
Which is a real thing, by the way. The water softens the reeds, so they're easier to weave. And you take the basket out and dry it, and now it's a nice basket.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I thought that underwater basket weaving was just a made-up thing. And then I found out that, no, that's actually a real thing.
There's no reason there are basket weaving degrees.
Actually, there's a market in Charleston, and one of the things that you can buy there are hand-woven baskets, and they're pretty nice. And it's like this traditional craft that's been practiced there by, well, I mean, it was brought there by slaves, but it's been continued mostly by the Gullah population for like 200 plus years. So
there are hand bags made out of I think it's Zimbabwe currency.
Oh, I've seen those. Yeah.
Valueless that they can sell the design for more than the currency's worth. And I think they're like $1 trillion bills. Like that's how hyperinflation is. Well, how bad it got. But
you know, in the Weimar Republic, which is another famous example of hyperinflation, people started burning banknotes for warmth in their fireplaces because you could get more warmth out of the banknotes than you could the amount of wood you could buy with those same banknotes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I said, well, sir, I believe it's very simple. He said, I believe in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, and God did it that way on purpose, just to make the Big Bang Theory look stupid.
All right, this is where we're going to stop for now. And Kent, that's not an explanation. Saying, I think God did it, doesn't tell us anything useful.
In a faith,
at least not in the science sense.
Outside the realm of science.
Yeah, well, in a scientific sense, that's not a useful explanation because it doesn't make any new predictions. It's not really testable. It doesn't do anything in terms of science.
Even if I don't agree with all of it, I agree with part of it because I'm a Christian and I believe that it's a fine statement of faith. But to say, oh, but this is scientific? No, it's not fine scientifically because there are things that, based on what I know you mean by some of the things you just said, I know you know they're not scientific.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching. I'm sorry that this wasn't live, and I'm sure that
I didn't get a chance to read them out loud because of time travel issues right now, but we'll see if I can fix that in the future.
Maybe in the next Kent with Bent that is live, we can like collect them and read them.
Yeah, we could do that. I'd do that.
We should have said that at first though, because now probably no one is super chatted at this point.
All right. So we got up. We're gonna have to start this whole thing over.
No.
Delete the whole thing.
I'm not doing that. All right. Well, bye everybody, and thank you for watching once again.